I've been wanting to make this video for over a year when I first made my channel. I held back on it simply because I wanted to improve and learn new things. Then I said, you know what, forget it, just do it. You can't wait for the perfect opportunity to do something because then you'll never be able to do it, or it'll be too late. So I'm going all out on this video, and can I be honest? Most of my videos consist of reading manga and finding the deeper meaning of them and what they're trying to portray. And I'm kinda tired of it. I wanted to have a bit more fun, and I kinda hate restricting myself to a script. I forgot what this video is about. Oh yeah, the greatest manga genre to ever exist. The delinquent genre. This genre has done a lot for me. It made me love manga, and it holds a special place in my heart. And this genre may or may not be for you, but I can guarantee if you read the mangas that are in this video, that they'll make you a better person. But how can you get into these mangas if you don't know the history? It's post-war Japan. Groups of young Japanese delinquent emerged, and these groups were called bancho. These groups were made up of males that were in high school and had a hierarchy structure, which meant that they had a leader or bancho who was typically the strongest. Now, they are different from Bosuzoku. The difference was the age.
General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations.
Bosuzoku were groups of World War II veterans who returned home and couldn't return to the normal life. And they also did some similar stuff, but were a little bit more extreme. Now, what kind of activities did these groups do? Some pretty cool shit. These mangas just make you want to do what you want. If you don't like that guy over there, just Superman punch him. So I grabbed the best and my favorite manga series in the genre, and I'll be giving you my honest opinion on them. Even though I love all of them, I'm not ranking them. The only one being ranked is the final manga, one of my favorite mangas of all time. See, this is what happens when I talk about something I love. Now we can finally get into the first manga. The godfather of the delinquent genre. That may be a crazy statement, and I hate to do this, but before we start, most of these mangas may have the same plot that revolve around a guy being transferred into a new school and likes girls and likes to fight, but they're all different and great in their own way. I love this manga. It's hilarious and genuinely funny. Maybe the reason why I like this genre so much is because of the humor and jokes. It's something I would joke about or say to my friends. You know, the stuff that gets you canceled if it was ever leaked. Tamara Noriko. She's out of this world. But who the fuck is that shit with her? Bebop High School revolves around Hiroshi and Toru. They just want to get girls and they like to fight and do whatever they want. The chapters in the story are almost like one-shots. They consist of them doing crazy and stupid stuff, like shaving their heads to get a girl or having to behave in school so that they don't get punished or expelled. At first you may not get the appeal of these series, but little by little you'll start to see it. Here's a little snippet of what I mean. This nerdy guy wants this girl, but she likes delinquents with attitudes. So he decided to go to Hiroshi and Toru and ask them to turn him into a delinquent. And when he's there begging, his nose starts bleeding. It's funny, it's small things like this that give the story a bit more heart. They give him some drip and give him a haircut, and voila. He goes to the park to ask the girl out again, and she calls him names, and then these two other guys show up who are friends with the girl, and they make fun of him and throw him to the ground. Hiroshi and Toru are watching this, so they go towards the guy and punch one of them and start calling the nerd guy boss. Hopefully you get the idea. This is a great starter manga for people who want to get into this genre or get into manga in general. To put it simple, it's easy to read and it's easy to understand, but it isn't as investing as all the other mangas on the list. At first you may look at the cover and be like, this is dog shit. But when you look past that and read this manga, you'll understand the true message it's portraying and how good it is. Seiichiro Kitano is a devil who is straight evil. He scares anyone and everything. He even beats his opponent in one hit. He's a monster. This is all a misunderstanding. Kitano is kind and tries his best to help everyone around him. He's used to these misunderstandings so much that his dream is to have friends who look beyond his scary face and see him for what he truly is. An angel. This manga might throw some people off, and I understand why. The art isn't the best, but it's also weirdly good at times. It fits the tone of the story, and sometimes looks really great. I honestly didn't think I would enjoy this series as much as I did, but I remember reading it and then finishing it in about a week. I really enjoyed it, and I feel bad for Kitano because of how sweet he truly is, but it's so funny when people misunderstand him. There's a chapter where Kitano and his group of friends go to his friend's dojo and her dad beats them all up, and you have to remember, they are high school kids. He just beats them all up and then he says this to Kitano: "Come and be sent back to hell, foul monstrosity." Huh? Take your stance, and that will be the signal to begin. Oh dear, I didn't think it was going to turn out like this. The way of martial arts is a tough one. This is a classic. If you read manga or know the genre, you heard of crows, and hopefully you heard good things about it. Hareluya Boya is a new kid at Suzerain, and he's pretty stupid, and he makes up for it with his strength. Boya is one of those main characters that you wanted to be like in middle school. I'm talking about myself. He looks cool and does whatever he wants and can back it up. Most of these mangas are great because of the characters in the manga. Their bond and connection, whether it be the main character and his friends or even the overall story and villains. This manga stands out as a classic because of its characters and its story arc. It's an easy and entertaining read. When Boya isn't being an idiot, he does and says some pretty cool and inspiring stuff. What's wrong with crows? Compared to a poor bird that's been caged and has forgotten how to fly, this is much better. I'm fine with being a crow. It got so dirty. Whatever. As long as I have this, I can do whatever I want. So I can never let that smile disappear. But now that it has, I can't smile either. He's talking about a picture of a girl that he found in another guy's wallet. He's never seen this girl before. Can you believe this is the same person? Crows is like the main story, and there's way more series that are connected and expanded or in the same universe, I think. So I'm going to include all of them except one, so bear with me. Worst: QP, Sunago no Crows, Crow 02, Crows Gaiden, Worst Gaiden, Kiku, QP Gaiden, Crows Gaiden, Katagiri Ken Montagari, Saigo no Worse, Crows Gaiden Hosaka, Crows Explode, Crow Zero Reboot, QP Gaiden Asuma Rio, and finally QP Gaiden Asuma Rio Desperado. This is for all the people who like violence and good art, and a lot of ecchi. Ikki is a third year who likes to fight, so he wants to join the ranks of the Shonan Seven. They consist of winners from a tournament, and this tournament is about picking 7 representatives from each high school to prove who is the strongest school. This manga is quick and doesn't overstay its welcome. The art is good and it's got a solid cast of characters and action. This isn't the best delinquent manga out there, especially with the excessive amount of corny events and cliches, but it's still a solid manga that might get you guys into this genre. It's also made by the author of G.T.O, so maybe that might convince you. This manga is so sick. If you're a fan of motorcycles like Takashi, you'll love this manga. Just look at these panels. Moving away from motorcycles, Bakuon Rettou is a very grounded story that is based on a real life experience. So far I've been calling these series cool, and they are, but don't get me wrong, most of these series romanticize the idea of being in a gang. Some do touch on this topic, but most manga deal with this towards the end of the series. Like, what are the characters going to do after graduation? They aren't always going to be invincible or in their teenage years forever. Takashi doesn't care about his future. He doesn't want to live a boring life and work in an office. He wants excitement and fun. A couple of years pass by and he realizes that he can't go back to who he was. He can't leave and just get a job. He recognizes how inescapable his consequences are. It's realistic and honest. Many of us can relate to this. We all felt this feeling before. Young, strong, and stupid, not a care in the world. Maybe it was a moment when you were hanging out with your friends, or a time when you were playing a sport, or a time when you got into a fight and won. In that moment you didn't care about anything else, just what was happening. Because you knew once it was over, you would end up coming back to the world. This manga is one of a kind, especially in this genre. And it might affect some of you guys, so check this one out. Do you guys like Blue Oyster Cult, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, The Doors? Well, if you said yes, then you'll love this manga. It's a pretty simple one though. Reggie and Katsuo head out to Tokyo to become the god of rock. But there's always some problems happening and they always end up getting into fights. The story is simple, but it makes up for it with its characters. Some of you guys might know this and some of you don't, but it's hard to start your band, and it's nice to see the struggle that new bands have to go through. Even though it's an underlining theme, it slowly reveals itself to you. Some of you guys may like that and some of you may not. Another classic. I love this series. It's definitely a manga that deserves its praise. Great Teacher Onizuka is about a substitute teacher who teaches an unteachable class. He's a pervert and a former gang member. Somehow he manages to get the position of a teacher, and he stumbles into these kids' lives. And when he does, he sees that they are truly good students, but they are just surrounded by mistakes and problems. And he helps and saves all of them. They all stem from different problems: a kid wanting to jump off the roof, one wanting to receive love from his parents. He makes a difference in their lives. He's a cool teacher that you can talk to. Some of you may have had a similar experience, or some of you guys wished you had a teacher like this. I cherish moments like this, like the time my teacher complimented me on my essay. Onizuka is the star of this manga. The fact that he's 22 and pretty immature makes him click with all his students. He bonds with all of them and can cure and solve their past traumas. I know it might be crazy to say this, but he's a role model. He's inspiring, and all the life lessons he teaches are bound to affect you. And they can teach you a couple things. This manga is for all the people who never had a role model or someone to look up to. This is a must read, and there's also an anime out, and it's great. The sports manga that isn't a sports manga. It's the best way I can put it. The plot goes like this. A new transfer teacher named Kawato Koichi comes to Nikugaku High School and becomes a homeroom teacher for a class that has a lot of punks, who are all in love with baseball. But an incident occurs that made them all split apart. He finds out about this and starts to get them all together to coach the baseball club. It isn't a coincidence that I put this after G.T.O. It's another great teacher. I also believe that students get closer to coaches more than teachers, but depending on the circumstances. Every time Koichi talks, it's always something so memorable. The little bird cannot imagine what goes on in the big bird's mind. In other words, small-minded men cannot understand the ambition of great men. The size of your ambition is a measure of how big of a man you are. Do not mock people for having dreams. And then he gets into a fight with a student. I can't help but be motivated and inspired by this manga. And I'll be honest, I don't like baseball and I can never really get into it. But this makes baseball cool and interesting. And what makes this manga even more amazing is the fact that this could have been a basketball or soccer manga or a manga about pottery. Baseball is just a stepping stone for these students and players. Rookies isn't a sports manga, it's a manga about dreams and goals. And the kids happen to be delinquents. This is another big delinquent manga, and this manga is almost shonen-like, but it deals with delinquents. Every arc has higher stakes and gets bigger and better. And my favorite arc is the final huge arc, which is a huge tournament arc. The only reason it's my favorite is because of the journey that we go through with these characters, and we see their growth. Most of the time, if the characters aren't likable, then this doesn't really work for the series, especially for a series that's so long. It's the characters that drive the story. This manga is about Hayato. He returns to his hometown and enrolls in the same high school as his two childhood friends. His arrival creates a problem for all the other thugs in the city, and of course he's pretty strong, and also an idiot. Can't forget that. This manga was pretty good. It had a solid story, and the characters and the relationship between Hayato and his two best friends is what really makes the story, especially the arc about Hayato's family. Most of the time when dealing with this genre, people forget that there's more to the characters than fighting and being stupid. Even if it doesn't show it or centers around it, there's hints here and there, which give the manga a bit more feeling and depth, and it does a great job at portraying that. If you can't tell by the title of this manga, this whole manga is a play on God and Jesus. If Jesus was a teenager with a huge ego and liked to beat up everyone. Don't worry, this isn't blasphemy or mocking Christianity. It's not even like a big story thing, it's just a reference. God, Hareluya's father, poses as a priest and sends him to the world because he lacks responsibility. What I like about this manga is the fact that he's so overpowered and nobody questions it. He magically pulls a bat and frying pan out of nowhere, and it doesn't make any sense, but it's fun and doesn't matter. I feel like a lot of people don't like that anymore. A story can't just be fun and fighting. It has to have meaning and a message. I understand that, but sometimes I just want to watch a show or read a manga that's just entertaining. I don't have to sit there and think about the hidden message or anything. Just enjoy it and read. And if it does have that, then that's great too. To me, that doesn't seem like a valid statement. Just because a story isn't deep doesn't mean it's not good. It's the same as saying a series is overrated, and that's it. You don't even back it up. Hey, I like this manga. Oh, that manga? It's overrated. I did a video on this manga and I was sick at the time, and I had no idea what I was doing, so I included it on this list to redeem myself and to properly talk about this manga. I absolutely love this manga. This was the first manga I ever read that wasn't shonen, and this may sound crazy, but when I first read it, I had reached up to about 15 chapters and then dropped it. One day out of nowhere, I was reminded of it and I picked it up and read every single chapter back to back. I couldn't put it down. In the video that I made, I explained that this manga made me a better person, and it truly did. Maeda isn't someone who you would normally look up to, someone you wouldn't want to be. He's bad at school, he smokes, he skips, he fights, but his personality and his morals, that's what makes everyone follow him and revolve around him. He does these things that nobody else would do. He brings people together, and even when they hate him or become his enemies, they end up seeing his true colors and his strengths. Even if they don't like him, they respect him. And that's what I saw. That's what made me become better. I realized that I shouldn't be what others think of me. I should be who I want and who I need to be. Somebody others can rely on. And I know I'm not at that point yet, but I'm getting there, and that's the good thing. I'm now at a point where I don't care what others think about me or say about me. There was a lot of stuff that I left out in the video because I was sick. I had a whole segment of a personal story, progress on my life, and outlook on it. And I cut it all out because it was insufferable. My voice was so bad and my writing was even worse. It's less worse now, but I feel like I'm more expressive and I tend to hold back when scripting videos. So I'm happy that I gave myself the freedom of expressing how I truly feel. I know some of you may relate, and some of you may think like, what the fuck is wrong with this dude? They're Japanese comics. There's no way he's serious. I am. I'm not gonna sit here and lie. This manga made me laugh, made me feel suspense, and made me feel sadness. It even made me more disciplined, and I mean that. This whole video is honestly an excuse to talk about this manga again. Just joking. Maybe. I am finally able to tell the story that I've always been wanting to tell. You guys don't know how happy I am and how happy I was to reread this manga. It was so good and I had so many good memories come back. We'll go back and forth. During this time I was in high school. I don't remember the exact class, but it was a science class. For me, it was a pretty life-changing experience. I'm just weird, I know. Quick summary, Sakichi is a new guy who comes to school. He's an ex-boxer because of an accident that happened. This accident causes Sakichi to have a detached retina, and he's afraid of going through the surgery to fix it. Maeda hears this and decides to fight him in the ring and refuses to punch him in the face. Sakichi even tells him it was a lie to get him to fight fair, but Maeda fights him regardless and never once hits him in the face. This is for you, Stev 1. You know you can't beat me with just body blows. Even your friends know that. You don't make sense. To which Maeda replied with, I never make sense, but I'm different from you because I've got a dream that I'll never let go of. I'll become a world champion even if it kills me, and Chavez and Leonard, Kyosai and Noon, none of them will be able to touch me. Maeda surprisingly wins the fight and Sakichi calls him cool, and he goes to the US to get the surgery. But for some reason this moment stayed with me until this day. I'll tell you the story. I was sitting in class and we were taking a test, and the kid behind me was throwing lead at the back of my head. Yeah, whenever I tell the story, my friends would get so mad and tell me of all the things that I should have done. But what I did was nothing. I let him until he stopped. What's the point of the story? Well, the point is, I did what I've never done before. I usually lashed out a lot and had trouble with my emotions. I remember the discipline that Maeda had. Even though he didn't want to hold back and realized that it was a huge mistake when it was happening, he stayed true to his word. And I thought about this moment when this was happening. I know that's like a loser talk or lame, but I honestly don't care. I love this manga. I love Maeda. He taught me to be a man, to be stronger, to believe in yourself, and if you're going to do something, then do it, even if it means to hold back when you don't want to. And that's what I did. I decided to let it happen and not let it anger me. This manga is a masterpiece, and I stand by that. I love this manga. Maybe this whole segment was drawn out, and maybe you left, but I don't care. I love this manga, and I'll make 1,000 videos on it if I want to. Sorry about that. Mitsumine High School is known as the school with the most juvenile delinquents in the country. It is so bad and violent that even the teachers are scared for their lives. Asagiri is a new kid who comes to the school and starts beating everyone up. This manga is pretty funny, it has a lot of gags, and Asagiri is one big gag character. The main thing I enjoyed from the series is Asagiri and Tsunohara's development, both physically and mentally. They grow into these great leaders and start to have a following, which is always good to see. To be completely honest, this manga made me laugh a lot. More than any of the other series on the list. The humor is generic kid crude humor, which I like a lot. This genre just doesn't miss with its comedic aspect. There's scenes that don't even need to be there and add no element to the plot, but are hilarious and make you like the characters more and more. It's honestly brilliant. This manga reminds me a lot of Gintama, which is a huge compliment. And just like Gintama, it's able to shift the mood of the entire story with its characters and plot, with just a sentence or a panel. I hope I'm not digging my own grave here, but I thought that was pretty funny. And then the story also has cool one-liners like this. Do you guys really have the right to laugh at someone chasing their dream? This manga is pretty different from the rest, and it's similar to Bakuon Rettou, with the idea of regretting and wanting to go back, but unlike that manga, it's not a choice for Nanba. He was born into this family. Nanba wants to be a normal kid and wants to have a normal, fun high school life. You know, friends, going out, having fun. He doesn't like fighting, and for some reason he always gets into fights, so he decides to hide his identity. The whole feel of this manga is comic and cartoony, but at the same time it dwells into these concepts that are pretty relatable. Nanba is afraid that his family won't accept him for the way he is. Because of this, he has to balance expectations and his desires. But what comes first? I fairly enjoyed this manga, mostly because of the fact that I deal with the same issue. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. I didn't want to just please others and help them when I'm not enjoying it or getting any happiness out of it. I have my own dreams and desires, and that might be a little selfish, but sometimes it's okay to be selfish. Sometimes you need to do what you want and what you want to do. It's fine to help others now and then, but to revolve your life around that? I can't do that. I'm just going to show you the first couple of panels. Isaku Yazawa is a short coward who dreams of becoming a great leader of a gang. The problem is he's short and a coward, but he's kind of smart. This isn't a great manga, just a fun read, and it's pretty wild. I mean, he's peeing on him. This manga is 10 times more wild. The art, the perverted jokes, the action, it's insane. Some people are thrown off, but for some odd reason I enjoyed it. Katsuo is starting a new semester. He wants to throw away his dark past and build up a bright future of his dreams, and he ends up becoming a delinquent. His character is honestly really unlikable. He's a huge pervert who is small and weak. I honestly like the side characters more. Yeah, look at this guy. It's cool because me and Katsuo admire this dude. And before meeting him, Katsuo and his friend Toshi are hanging out, and Toshi gets beat up by bullies and they take his shoes. Katsuo is mad at himself for not stepping in, for being a coward. So he begs Matsuki and tells him his anger and disappointment. Matsuki teaches Katsuo how to fight and tells him to challenge the guy who beat him up. And Matsuki says that he'll be there just in case he loses. He falls asleep. Now Katsuo is there with the guy and he gets drunk. Now comes my favorite part. His will. He's so frustrated with being weak, he gets up and takes the beating. He falls again and stands back up. So he tries sneaking a headbutt and misses. And he flinches at an incoming punch and knees the guy in his face. And he imagines a lesson that Matsuki taught him, and imagines this guy's head as a soccer ball, and that's not all. This is why I read manga. I'll give a quick warning, because this series is one of the most violent and mature series in the video. This manga was a bit slow, but when it started to pick up, I enjoyed it heavily. This manga is about Tsukasa, who's a rich kid who's never really been a man. He can't even go out, he's stuck in his house playing the piano, and he's never once talked back to his mom and dad. Until his teacher tells him that he's miserable, and he isn't a man. And that if he becomes a man, she'll sleep with him. That's how the story begins. And Tsukasa is a great character. He grows a lot and is pretty cool. He reminds me a lot of Luffy. I'm not comparing them, but their determination is both admirable and similar. Bad Boys is a great manga, especially the messages that it portrays. The characters, the story, the plot, the villains, they all work together really well. This manga does a great job at villains. Another warning, because this manga treats girls pretty badly, but later on it fixes that. And honestly, I'm a little mad that nobody ever talks about this series. It's the delinquent genre if it was a full-blown shonen, and it does a pretty good job. The anime is great. I remember finishing it and going straight into the manga. It's funny and easy to follow and easy to understand, especially if you like episodic anime. The story is about Oga. He's the main character. He finds a man in the river, and the man gives him a baby, and the baby crawls onto his back. The baby is the son of a demon lord. And no, he's not Baby Zoro. The story has good action and magic from time to time, but it never loses the element of what it stands for, which is the aspect of delinquents. Even though they start adding demons and magic, it never loses that aspect. Oga is pretty underrated. I never hear about him or the series anymore, which is kind of sad because it moved me. Oga is someone you should aspire to be, except for the part of kidnapping babies. A man must follow through on something once he decides it. I said that, right? But watching your friend get done in without doing something, that's not being a man at all. The story follows the high school delinquent Masaya Funabashi, who's known as the devil, and he's trying to reform his image by joining the Japanese tea ceremony club. He likes helping people and is shy. He has a hard time expressing himself, and this was a pretty sweet manga. I really enjoyed it, especially because it's the same creator as one of the other mangas on the list. It has the same elements as other mangas, but it's not as inspirational or impactful, but I do love the romance aspect of it. This is the most mature series on the list and is basically the seinen of all of these series. When I first read this manga, it was chill and had some dark themes here and there, and some of the fights were a little gruesome. And then all of a sudden, it started to show how brutal and violent this life can be. It made a shift from your generic delinquent manga to a manga about conflict and violence and even war. So if you don't like that, then don't read this. I mean, most of these mangas are violent, but this is straight murder. Iguchi Tatsuya is a 17-year-old who just got out of juvenile detention, and he's on probation. He is sent to live with his aunt, but he somehow ends up running into more delinquents, and he loves to fight. This story feels like a real story. Of course, it's over the top and exaggerated, but it has tension. Their lives are at stake. They won't end up in the hospital in the next chapter. They die and don't come back. It reminds me of Holy Land, which is a really good compliment. In Holy Land, when they fight, most of their action and consequences last a while. But unlike Holy Land, this manga has a lot of people and a lot of information in such a short amount of time. It doesn't really bother me, but maybe it might bother you guys because I got a little confused towards some of the more recent chapters. This manga is sick, aesthetically nice, and pretty damn good. I've never really wanted tattoos, but I would be lying if this manga didn't convince me into liking them or possibly getting one in the future. I mean, come on, look at this. He's clean, you can't even lie. Jimmy fell out of a window, and the guy with tattoos rescues him. So ever since that, he decided to become a tattoo artist and find the guy who saved him, because tattoos represent a hero to him. Jimmy is pretty kind and just wants to be a tattoo artist. He doesn't really fight to prove anything, only when his friends are in danger or when he wants to. Have you guys seen that bleach drawing of them being in gangs? That's what this art reminds me of. They're always so clean and dripped out. I don't think I can call this video a recommendation video anymore. I've just been talking so much about my life and the way these mangas have affected me and how good they are. There's a moment in this manga where a dude aims a knife at Jimmy and Jimmy says this: "Your knife scares me, but people hiding themselves behind weapons are all losers." You guys don't understand how many quotes I've copied and told my friends and family and put into my essays. It's insane. There's one main lesson I learned from this manga and I apply it to my life till this day. The real power of a man is to be able to not fight in front of the woman he loves. This manga was made for me. I'm not trying to sound corny, but it's true. Just listen. Hiroshi is a normal student who hates his boring life. He goes to private school and he hates it. He reads delinquent manga and decides to drop out and dye his hair. He goes to a new school and decides to prove himself. Hiroshi is an idiot and he's not that strong, but he has heart. In the first fight that he gets into, he starts to name delinquent mangas. He must have watched this video. He ends up being overshadowed by all the other characters and the leader of his group, who's actually strong, and may or may not be the main character in A-Bout, Iguchi Tatsuya. Eventually, him and Hiroshi end up fighting, and there's a pretty simple but powerful moment. Hiroshi admires Tatsuya, but he knows he can never beat him, and he's afraid. He's chained up, but all he has to do is just move forward. The final manga on the list, and this is my favorite manga in this category, and one of my favorite mangas of all time. I've never would have thought that this series would be so impactful. Well, to me. I think the reasoning behind it is because of the two main characters, Ito and Mitsuhashi. They are tired of their boring life, and they both want to be delinquents, so they get the craziest haircut they could ever think of. Ito chooses a very spiky haircut, and he's honestly someone who I aspire to be. He is very strong and very noble and righteous. They even describe him as a hero of justice, and is a man of his word. The problem is that they are delinquents, so he gets used and betrayed and lied to. Mitsuhashi chooses to dye his hair. He is the exact opposite of Ito. He is very egotistical and self-centered. He wins by any means necessary. Cheap shots, weapons, doesn't matter. Why? Because whoever wins is the strongest. He is really evil. He plays pranks and messes with people just because he likes to and hates when other people have what he doesn't. They are a perfect duo. Even though Mitsuhashi acts like this, he's kind and a really good friend. Everything about the series is awesome. The humor made me laugh and I was excited to read this manga. I stayed up reading it. I read it while on lunch break. I read it while at school. I looked forward to the next chapter every single day. I enjoyed each character in each of their little arcs, and they even return in other chapters. They aren't forgotten. Most series do this a lot. Whenever they beat a villain or mention a new character, you don't really see them anymore. So I'm glad that this manga did this. And have any of you ever gotten excited or tense when reading manga? Because this manga made me feel this way. I felt excited and smiled and laughed and got anxious when reading this manga. There's parts in this manga that excited me so much that you have to read it to understand. But I'll tell you about it. Ito is about to get into a fight with a group of guys, and they're there to beat up a girl. And Aima, who's another main character, is there. And he doesn't really want to help because the girl beat him up before for no reason. And Ito tells Aima to take the girl home and to protect her. At first he denies it, but Ito says, "I'm counting on you, Aima." He ends up getting beaten up pretty bad, and the girl asks, "Because Ito is counting on me." She tells him to stay down and goes home. She gets to her room and looks out her window, and this is just one out of a million scenes that pop up in my head. Even the final arc, I won't get into it, but there was a moment where I was sitting down and reading, and I immediately jumped out of my seat, and I was sweating and happy and excited. I love the series from the bottom of my heart, I really do. It's crazy how these stories can make you feel. It's crazy how long I've been talking and I haven't calmed down. I love manga and I'm happy and proud of myself for making this video. If you're still here, thanks for listening and watching, and if you've left and came back or skipped all the way over here, thank you. I don't care, this video was just an excuse to talk about my favorite manga ever. If you don't like this genre, just try it out, please. I would have never made a channel if it wasn't for these mangas. They've made me laugh, cry. I even started to work out because of these mangas. So if you need some motivation, or if you feel lost or afraid to do something, just do it. Just go forward. I can finally say this. Fuck Tokyo Revengers.